Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to answer another question, good one, from Octopus RPG, who asks, I'm curious if there are any games that you didn't work on with mechanics or design that made you think, quote, wow, I wish I had thought of that, unquote. Yes. There are so many that what I did is I went back and tried to look at my top 6 or 7, and it goes back quite a ways because I keep a lot of notes, as people know. In fact, I'm going to show you some. Because throughout my career, I've encountered games that just made me go, that's neat. I like that. Some of them had mechanics I never ended up using. Some were ones that I'm like, hey, I'm going to make a modification of that. So let me start at the beginning, going all the way back to the 80s. The first time I played Ultima 3. I had a ton of fun with that game. I think it's my favorite Ultima. It's also the first one I played. I'm frequently like that. Like, I like Baldur's Gate 1 more than 2. Probably just because I played 1 first. But Ultima 3 I played before 1 and 2. So I just kind of like Ultima 3 the best. One of the things that was in there was a moon gate. And it was called a moon gate. And when you stepped into the moon gate, it seemed to teleport you at random to outside different cities throughout the world. It probably took me longer to figure this out than other people. Remember, this is back before you could go look stuff up on the internet. The moon gates were actually controlled by the phases of the moon. There were 2 moons, and at the top of the interface there were 2 little circles, and they would change phase as you played the game. And they were right next to the time, so I assumed they were there just to give an indication of passage of time. No. Depending on the phases of those 2 moons, they controlled where those moon gates went. It took me a long time to figure it out. When I did, I was like, what a great idea. Because you could then, by just glancing up at those phases, know exactly where the moon gate was going to take you. There was something else actually in Ultima 3 that I noticed. I kind of liked it. Didn't like it as much as the moon gates, which was wind. The game would always tell you the direction that wind was blowing. And I wasn't sure why that was needed. They ended up using it for when you were running around in boats. The wind would control the direction your boat could go. You could never take your boat directly into the wind. Didn't use boats that much. Use it occasionally. There were a few places you needed a boat to get to. But I thought that was kind of cool. The next game I remember thinking, whoa, I've said how much I love Star Control 2, and that I do consider it to be an RPG. Just happens to be that you're the ship, and all the upgrades apply to you, the ship. But it has everything else RPGs have. It has a big open world to explore. It has dialogue. It has inventory. It has levels. It has quests. It's a cool game. If you haven't played it, I think it holds up. But one thing that I thought was really interesting about Star Control 2 were hit points in that game were crew members. When there was, I don't remember if it was for every ship, but there were a lot of ships where when you took damage and the bar went down, that was your crew getting killed. It was your crew being killed. There was one ship that powered its weapon, its powerful weapon, with hit points, which meant it was shoveling crew members into some kind of furnace to burn to shoot this weapon. Kind of blew my 20-something brain, early 20-something brain. The next game I remember going, wow, I love that idea, was the first time I played Diablo. And I played a few levels, got to the Butcher, which apparently everybody gets to. I think it's like level 5 or 10. And my Butcher level was different than other people's Butcher levels. In fact, we talked about how we fought the Butcher, and we all realized some of the rooms were the same, but the rest of the dungeon was different. The dungeons were being procedurally generated. I thought that was super cool. I love procedural generation. I think AI is going to be a great tool for games, not just for conversation, but I think some procedural generation of details in a world, AI can do a great job at that. What's funny is the original D&D guide, DM's guide for AD&D had dungeon generation in the back. And as you all know, I keep notes. This is a book I have. It's just graph paper. And I generated dungeons at random when I was in high school, and I still have them. It's funny stuff. But these were all things that I made. just because I thought procedural generation was a neat idea. And I ran my high school D&D group through a few of them, and they didn't know it was procedurally generated. It just seemed like typical dungeon to them. So plus plus. The next time I remember going, wow, ironically, was for EverQuest, not WoW. EverQuest was a really great MMO. In many ways better than EverQuest. But EverQuest, when I first played it, and I realized after all my years of playing LP Mud, that EverQuest was literally like LP Mud with a graphics front end wrapped around it, I was like, boom, this is transformative. I think Ultima Online came out before, a little before, or about the same time, but EverQuest is the one that made me go, this is going to change the way people play games online, and especially online RPGs. EverQuest just was, they did so many things right, even if it wasn't as polished as MMOs that would come afterwards. And in many ways, I don't really care about the polish, I care about the ideas, and EverQuest was jam-packed with some really good ideas, and some frustrating ones. But to me, EverQuest was a game that made me go, take note, it's the late 90s, things are never going to be the same again. And then the couple other games I want to talk about that when I played them, I went, I like that. The first one was Fallout 3, when I noticed that weapons and armor could degrade, but you could repair them with similar weapons and armor. What I loved about that idea, instead of just saying you have to go find generic screws and, metal, you used your repair skill, so the amount repaired was proportional to your repair skill, but because some of those weapons were really common, it meant some guns were easier to keep repaired because you were always seeing these as drops, so you could use them to keep your weapon in top condition. Some things were really hard to find. I think like radiation suits, were they in Fallout 3 or were they only in Fallout New Vegas? But I remember they were very rare, so repairing them by finding a similar radiation suit, those were hard to find. So what I would often do is if I found a new radiation suit, I'd wear it until they were both worn down a little bit. Then I'd combine them and make them better again. I like it because it made rare items either harder or more expensive, depending on how you wanted to look at it. Harder to find them, or the fact that you were using them to repair rather than selling them. And I love that because the decision was entirely on the player. And I also loved how it made sense. I'm going to repair this thing. Oh, I've got this other thing. I can scavenge for parts. So I love that idea. The other thing I saw once came from Bethesda's other Fallout game, Fallout 4. I liked how they handled radiation. In our games, radiation was kind of like poisoning. It had an invisible meter because we didn't want to do another UI element. It would tell you when you got radiated. It would tell you when things started to affect you, so you knew something was happening, and then you could take radiation drugs before or after to try to ameliorate it. What I loved about Fallout 4 was when you got near radiation, you heard it and saw it, because it would pop up saying, radiation +3, +4. But the radiation meter was your health meter. As you took radiation damage, it reduced your max XP. Now, I love this idea for multiple reasons. One, from a UI standpoint, it's brilliant. You have one meter that represents two different stats. From a system mechanic standpoint, I love it too, because when you start taking radiation, it is automatically pushing down your maximum XP, or your maximum HP. So you know you're losing hit points, but your bar is still full because it's filling with radiation at the top end. So you see radiation increasing and your max health going down. Even if you use a drug like Radaway to get rid of that radiation, and it goes away, the high part of the bar, I think it's red, I'm colorblind, I don't know, it goes away, you're still left with lower health. You then have to heal your health with stim packs, or going to a doctor, or sleeping in a bed. I love that idea because it makes radiation have side effects that you have to deal with that make sense. You already know the radiation has lowered your health. It's still lowered when you heal the radiation, because radiation is healed separately than health. I love it. It's in my mind, it was kind of like the perfect mechanic, because both in the way it worked systemically in the game, the way it presented itself through the UI to the player, and the way the player then had to react to it and deal with it, were all just great. It is something I like to point to junior designers and go, that's an example of a perfectly implemented design feature. I don't know what their design pillars were, but it would hit all of mine about easy to understand, requires the player to handle, makes sense on how to handle it. So I like all that stuff. So I think, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that's 6 different games I've mentioned. Ultima 3, Star Control 2, Diablo, EverQuest, Fallout 3, and Fallout 4, all of which had mechanics or a general design that made me go, wow, I wish I had thought of that. And that was a great question, Octopus RPG.